Say I be goddamn it, they done changed the world.
I'm John Walsh, and this is In Pursuit. Our first story tonight is gonna make your blood boil. Luis Frias has done everything he possibly can to climb to the top of my own personal most wanted list. I've covered thousands of fugitives in 25 years, and none of them is more despicable than a man who beats a woman or a child he claims to love.
Wow. I don't even know how you follow that one, DJ Wonder. Sway in the Morning, Shade 4-5. Our citizen, our good friend, he is here. You recognize the voice as soon as you hear it. It's so true. But he's here, and he's back as the host with his son of a new show, In Pursuit with John Walsh. Welcome him back to the show with his son. John Walsh is here, baby. Introduce your son as well.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
This is my wonderful son, Callahan. He worked for me for years. He used to be in the music business with the Runners. They wrote Rick Ross's Hustlin'. They had 12, he and two other guys, the Runners, the three of them had 12 Billboard top 10 hits in 1 year. They wrote songs for Jay-Z, for Rick Ross, for Lil Wayne. They wrote Hustlin', but he worked for me for years after he got out of college. I wanted him to come with me in the television business, be a field reporter. And he said to me, Dad, I love working for you, but I always wanted to work at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which is in Washington, D.C. We started after our 6-year-old son Adam's murder in 1981. So he's been working there for 5 years, and we had such a horrible year in America last year. We had 307 mass murders in 2018. We had 33 gun deaths. We had 27 school shootings. 144 cops were killed in the line of duty. ID Investigation Discovery came to me and said, would you come out of retirement? America has just become this crazy gun culture. Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, and New Orleans have a clearance rate of only 28%. They're setting records of homicide. Chicago has broken the record every year except last year. So I said, yes, I'm going to saddle back up. And Henry Schleif's the president of Investigation Discovery, and I said I'd like to bring my son Callahan as my field reporter so he can go out on the weekends, talk to the victims. He grew up in this business. He worked for me, and he has the empathy and compassion for victims, and he knows how to talk to cops. So I'm lucky and honored to have him working with me.
Wow. John, we've been talking about purpose all morning. And you mentioned this very briefly that you came out of retirement, but how do you ever quite retire from your purpose? You became so passionate about this, and everyone knows you and recognizes you from your work. So in your retirement, what did you do? Because I know your mind didn't stop working, or your heart.
I'm a real old guy, and I'm still married to the same woman, which 47 years.
Wow.
80% of parents of murdered children wind up in divorce. So while I was around the world chasing bad guys, we caught America's Most Wanted was a hit primetime show for 25 years. And while I was around the world chasing bad guys, I'd come home Friday, leave on Sunday to Cambodia or Pittsburgh or Chicago or Detroit, wherever. She raised these beautiful kids. And when the FBI and marshals came to me and said, America is out of control, the criminal justice system is broke, the wrong people are in prison, I always said that. The bad guys need to be in there, not a guy who sold 4 pounds of pot and gets 10 years. That's it. It was no. We finally got some sentencing reform.
Right.
And I said, to my wife, I've got an opportunity here. I can't sit by. We turn down 250 cases a week. The hardest thing is to pick the cases. I said, cops are overwhelmed. America has become the laughing stock of the world. We're this insane gun culture, setting records. We are the number one abuser of children in sex trafficking of children. People think it's Cambodia and India, and it happens there in Thailand, but we're number one in the world. We're the richest, most powerful country on the planet. We have the most homicides. Our major cities have a terrible clearance rate of about 28%. And I went, I'm going to saddle up, and I want to take Cal with me. And I said to my wife, I'm going to try to make sure he doesn't get killed out on the street out there.
Damn.
Because we had some tough run-ins over the years. He had to grow up with the bodyguards and death threats, and the FBI killed 2 different guys that tried to kill me over the years. So, but I believe that you fight back. I mean, it took 27 years to solve my little boy's murder.
Right.
And I believe you fight back. I believe you just say, hey, to the public, because 98% of people I met in the world are good. I go in the hood all the time, and the people come out and cheer me and go, John, we hate these bastards. They're in here. Chicago, kids come home from college and get killed in drive-bys, and 700 murders. It's in no clearance rate. A kid will get murdered with 400 witnesses, and no one will have the guts. I hate this stop snitching bullshit. These people are out there killing people. Chicago, 99% of the murders are African-American kids under 18 years old. It's kids killing kids. And if you know of a kid who killed 5 kids, you can drop a dime. All you got to do, call me. We don't tap phones. We don't trace phones. I have the bond of trust with the public. I've met hundreds of Chicago parents of murdered children. The thing that sort of puts that past you and helps you, no closure, you always be the parent of a murdered child, but helps you put that end to that chapter of your life is when the dirtbag who did it has to pay for it. So I say, look, I know nobody wants to call the cops. I don't blame you. But no, we don't trace or tap calls. No cops answer my phones, and people know it. For 25 years, they would call me, and I said, don't tell me who you are, where you are. I don't need to know. Tell me where the dirtbag is. I'll make sure there's no revenge. I'll make sure it'll never come. It never has come out. And people call me from all over the world, and they turn in these creeps and they're in there. When I go into tough parts of those cities, people say, particularly parents, they say, we need to get these guys off the street. Young people need to drop a dime if they saw a murder, if they know somebody, and they can do it without any revenge, without any no assistant DA is going to knock on the door of a cop and say, oh, you called America's Most Wanted and you turned in your cousin, or you're illegal and we're going to deport me. I go, I don't care whether you're legal, illegal, who you are. Don't tell me your name. Tell me where the dirtbag is. I'll pick him up.
It's so funny. We never look at it from the perspective of parents losing their children, because for us, and I've been sharing it here with my family, my extended family, I've lost both my parents in the past 2 years, not to anything violent, but just dealing with the loss and in the mourning of that. But I can't even imagine if it would have been reversed for them. We never think about these parents who bury their children so early. We bury
thousands of them in Chicago. What a great city Chicago is. How can they have 600 murders in a year and only solve 28% of them? It's bullshit.
Crazy.
It's wrong. It's just, it's insane. And this gun culture, that guy in Las Vegas was able to buy 14 automatic weapons, super clips, bump stocks. I hunt. I own guns. I own shotguns and pistols. Nobody needs these assault rifles. So in 10 minutes that it took the SWAT team to get there, he murdered 68 people and shot 800 other people in 10 minutes because he had all these automatic weapons. Every other country in the world, first world country, has extensive background checks. 80% of those 27 school shootings were very disturbed kids that people knew who they were. They knew that they couldn't function. That kid in Parkland down there was kicked out of that school 3 times. How the hell can these kids get guns? Because the NRA's up there in Washington scaring the living hell out of every congressman up there and say, you vote for a gun. They promised those Sandy Hook parents of those 26 6-year-old kids that were murdered by that psycho boy that they were going to pass stricter gun control. Every other country has a psychological background check. You wait 2 weeks. You have to prove that you know how to use that gun, not leave it in your nightstand for your 3-year-old grandson to shoot somebody or himself with it. 5 kids a week in this country die from gun accidents. And they held Congress, they're a gun manufacturing rep funded by the gun companies, and they hold Congress hostage. So they'll say, you're going to vote for gun control? I'm going to run against you. I'm going to put $5 million into your district, put up some guy against you, and you're going to lose your seat. So you know what? They didn't vote. They promised those parents there were 5 bills before Congress of stricter gun control, better background checks. 80% of Americans want better background checks. They don't want a sociopath to get a gun, to go to a gun show. You can get a gun if you're not a convicted felon. You can be a sociopath and go get a gun. But you know what those bills happened? They never even got to committee. They never even forget about voted on the floor. They never had hearings about those 5 gun control laws.
Wow.
So, we're the richest, most powerful country and the freest, but we are the most violent first world country on this planet.
John Walsh is here. He's joined by his son, Cal. If you want to talk to him, 888-742-3345. Sway in the morning, Shade 45. John Walsh is here, joined by his son, Callahan. The new show, In Pursuit with John Walsh, premieres tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the ID channel. DB, you had a question for John?
Yeah, we touched on this right before we went to the music, but about people who have to deal with grief for losing someone in a violent manner. You've experienced that, and so a lot of times they blame themselves. Even if you get closure or if the person gets caught, it does, like you said, result in divorce because they can't get over that, you know, that feeling of like, I could have done something different, or what if I had been there? How do you manage to, or do you have any advice for people who have to deal with situations like this about getting past that feeling?
Two things. Great question. Two things. If there are other siblings in the family, you got to focus on those siblings because they're dying of a broken heart. And when they see dad or mom crying over the loss of a child, they shovel it in. And then when you see them later on, 14, 13 years old, and they're starting to have problems in school, it was because they didn't want to make it worse for mom or dad. Mom and dad were dying of broken hearts, but nobody came to them and got them counseling or talked to them. You stand there and you say, look, little sister or little brother, we're not going anywhere. We love you. This is a horrible thing. We'll get through this together. That's how we did. I lucky stayed with the wife. And lots of times, and I say people don't have to do this. Number one, people with suicide children, it's not your fault. It's not, you had nothing to do with it. You could go to sleep every day and say, if I'd have done something different, if I'd have been about, no, that was the card that was dealt to you that day. So the tough thing is to stay together, to keep the family together and take care of yourself. You know, take care of yourself. When Adam was murdered, I lost 30 pounds. I was a partner in my own company. I was building a $26 million hotel on Paradise Island. I couldn't work. I couldn't function. The power company shuts off your power. They repossess your car or your mortgage. You have to get up every day for those other kids. You have to do it for your partner. You can't blame yourself. Even if they caught the perp, you still will always be the parent of a murdered child. My wife explains it this way, which is great, and Callahan grew up hearing that. It's a color that I hope you never see. And it's a wound that will heal over, but it'll get open and cracked open, but you won't bleed to death. You'll bleed the rest of your life. So you accept that fact that you're the parent of a murdered child or someone you love, but you've got to do everything you can to take care of yourself because you owe it to the rest of the family to be the guy or the mom, to saddle up, put your pants on, go to work, honor that child. Callahan always talks about how we celebrated Adam's birthday. That's a brother he never met. I've had 2 sons and a daughter. I've got 3 grandchildren. We celebrated Adam. We talked about him. We had his pictures everywhere. We loved that little boy so much that we didn't dwell on that one horrible day of his life. We dwelt on the fact that I was blessed. He was my first child. Made me a better man. Made me a father. And I'll tell you what, I don't know what the hell happened to the fathers in this country. And it crosses all economic boundaries, race, creed, and color. They just disappeared. There's boys walking around this country dazed and confused, don't know how to tie a tie, how to shine their shoes, don't know what to do. They're lucky if they go to a Boys and Girls Club. I raise money for Boys and Girls Clubs too and the National Center. But what happened to these fathers that said, I'm going to hold you accountable. You're not going to run off with MS-13, sell drugs. You're not going to hang on the corner with the Crips or Bloods or the Mexican Mafia. I'm going to hold you accountable. You're going to do your homework and I'm going to do it with you. I'm going to sit there. I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to sit there with you. I'm going to help you get through this, and I'm going to teach you how to be a good man or how to be a good woman. And that's disappeared in this country. I don't know what happened to it. You know, Colin Powell is a good friend of mine. He says, John, I just don't know what happened to the dads in this country. I had a great dad. And you're lucky. And it's not an excuse if you don't have a good dad or your dad wasn't in it. You can break that chain. We have people that work at the National Center that were molested and abused, but they're not abusers. They're not out molesting anybody. They're breaking the chain. So if you came from a not-so-great family, why don't you saddle up and be a good father? Why don't you settle up and be a good man and make a difference? It's not that hard. It's just loving somebody. It's just caring for them and doing the right thing. So, you know, I talk to parents all the time. There's no magic formula. There's no therapy is good. Parents of murdered children are great. You sit there and talk to other parents because unless you walked in those shoes, you don't know. You have no idea. You have no idea. But a good question.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I'm happy you're here as well, Cal. I'm wondering, John, when you mentioned how you've gone into hoods, and I could tell that you can easily speak to variety of people. Doesn't matter your culture, doesn't matter your race. In the beginning of your career, though, when you're going into different parts where it's just all completely black or all completely Latino, did you feel comfortable and did they embrace you? Because some people see a white man and automatically think, nah.
But I grew up as an athlete. I played in college, and athletics is a great way to get over that bullshit.
True.
You've got to function with every kind of guy. I boxed and I played soccer. Cal was a terrific soccer player. You got to look and say, hey, it doesn't matter who, where, what you're from. You better play hard. You're part of that team. That's a good. I always talk to kids. My father was a great advocate of team sports. It teaches you to be humble because there's always somebody better than you.
Right.
And he can be from everywhere. He might be from a country and speak a language you never knew, but you get out on that field together, you got to work together. But I had those parents that and I believe education is a great way to build tolerance. So I tell kids all the time, stay in school, you'll be able to talk to people. I never worried about going in the hood. I grew up in the 60s. I had the long hair, and the whole deal. So we didn't give a shit. We didn't care if you're gay or Puerto Rican or whatever you are, you're a person.
Yeah.
And I never felt uncomfortable. I had the bodyguards because guys try to, I profiled horrible people, and there's a lot of people that want to get famous by killing somebody. Like they're dirtbags to begin with, then they want to be Charles Manson. They want to become infamous. So that was the kind of guys I would get threats from, and that's why the FBI and the marshals would hunt these guys down, so they didn't kill me to get infamous or whatever. People have shot the Pope. They killed presidents, etc. And Cal had to grow up with all that type of stuff. But I always feel comfortable when I go in there because in those places are people that are just like me. They're trying to pay the bills, feed their kids, get them through college. And there's a bunch of little dirtbags that are in there preying upon them. And that's the little dirtbags I go after.
Yes. John, another one of our producers, Orlando, over there in the corner, he has a question for you. You never ask questions, Orlando.
I'm a big fan of John. And, I followed your career. And after the horrible thing that happened to Adam, you have to move on and raise two other kids. How did you raise them without being overbearing? You know what I mean? Because some people, they live in fear, like, hey, you know what? Maybe we're not going to do a baseball practice, or, maybe you're 18 by the time you take the train by yourself. So how did you raise,
Great question, because when you lose a child, Cal, you can answer that. How did we raise you and your brother and your sister?
I think most people would think that following the death of my brother and having more kids, that my parents would never let me out of the house again, right? But they understood that being a part of society is a part of growing up. And I had all the rules. I had to check in with my parents, tell them where I was, all the rest. But they still allowed me to be that individual, that person that I needed to be to grow and mature with their guidance, but not shelter me away from society, not keep me in a bubble, because that's not what it's all about. People have to be street smart. They have to be aware. They have to be able to deal with other individuals, and getting your kid out there and having them experience life is really what it's about. Adam's life was cut short. They don't want to cut my and my siblings' lives short too by keeping us indoors all day. So getting us out there, experiencing life is fulfilling the tragedy of losing a child so young, that we can go on and still have these experiences, and my father can come to my sporting events and watch me play soccer or football or rugby, what have you, and going out there and being a kid. I mean, that's what it's all about. You got to go out there and experience life.
I don't believe in paranoia, but I do believe in street smart, and I believe knowledge is power. I always taught these kids all the different rules. You got to talk to your kids. Every kid knows more about his iPad or his iPhone than you do. He can make it spin around. He can go, and you'll never figure out what they're doing. You got to talk to them and say, hey, the internet's a dangerous place. There's people that are trying to get you to give mom and dad social security numbers so they can rip us off by giving you 2 free downloads on iTunes. They're trying to send you, stuff,
Deal.
and these guys are in their caves, trying to groom kids. They're constantly grooming kids online. And they'll always find that kid who has no mom or no dad or dysfunctional parents and go, oh, we empathize with you. Oh, don't tell your parents, meet me at the mall. Then they go to the mall, it's a 45-year-old creep that's been talking to that little girl for a year. So you got to talk to kids and say, look, if somebody does something online that makes you uncomfortable, If you can't talk to me, talk to mom. If you don't want to talk to mom and me, talk to the teacher. But we need to know that your cyber tip line had how many calls last year from kids?
We had 10 million reports to our cyber tip line last year at the National
10
Center.
million?
From kids. Yeah, from kids.
We're looking at doubling it this year, and we're the national repository for all sexual suspected sexual abuse of children. So if there's online enticement, which we're seeing tons of these days, these kids are online constantly. They're being messaged by adults that are preying on these kids, and they're being lured and groomed from the home. And when they do leave on their own volition, they're chalked up as a runaway. And we know the media doesn't look at runaways the same they look at, stranger abducted children. But we know these runaways are in danger. We know 1 in 7 runaways is likely to become a sex trafficking victim.
Wow.
They're lured and groomed from the home, promises love and affection, something they're oftentimes not getting at home. They think they're getting a new boyfriend. He's buying her a new cell phone, a new outfit. They run away. They join up with this
foster care.
this
They
pimp,
leave.
and next thing you know, they're in the life. And we see it time and time again. The internet has created life for the better in so many ways, but it's created so many new ways to harm children as well.
Cal and John, you guys have a lot of phone calls, but due to time, citizens, you're gonna have to hit them up on social media and hashtag Sway in the Morning, so they know that you've been listening to the great conversation that we had. John, where can people reach you on social media?
I have a Facebook page. Cal, what's our...
So we've got a couple. So
Yep.
my father's on Twitter, John_Walsh. You can look us up. We've got a Facebook page specifically for the show,
Okay.
In Pursuit with John Walsh, and also John Walsh Official on Facebook. They can go there. We've got updates every day on the
Okay.
In Pursuit with John Walsh Facebook page.
Ask me your questions.
Yeah.
And knowledge is power.
And don't
truly.
forget, tomorrow the show will premiere at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay, on the ID channel, ID Investigation Discovery. Thank you so much, man, for coming through. We love and appreciate you. Thank you, Cal.
Great to
We're going
see
to bring
you
Cal
guys.
back, too, to talk some music.
Right.
Play some
next week.
beats.
And
Maybe
play
be a
some
guest
beats.
producer.
Yeah, man. All right, Sway in the Morning, Shade 45. We got more up next.